Hello, class. It's Professor Beasley. Just here, wanted to check in with you a little bit before I start this lecture. So I posted last week information about your upcoming assignment, which is a pitch proposal assignment. All of our assignments and the videos about those assignments are listed in Canvas in the modules section, and they're organized by week. So you'll be able to go into that week, you'll be able to see everything you're supposed to watch, everything that you're supposed to do, whatever needs to be turned in, all of that information is going to be listed in the modules section on Canvas. I've had some students reach out and say that they're having a challenging time using Canvas. I'm happy to talk to you about Canvas. I can go through a Zoom meeting to let you know what you need to do for this class on Zoom. Just please reach out to me, let me know what it is that I can help you with. We're all trying to help you succeed here, but the only way that I can help you is if you let me know that you're having a problem. You are still required to turn in your assignments, just like always. You're required to check in and make sure that you get things turned in on time. Your assignments will be listed in Canvas, so none of that is any different from our normal class operations. The only thing that's different is we just don't see each other face to face. Unless we do something like a Zoom meeting, which I'm more than happy to do with you. So I just wanted to mention that before I start this presentation, just to give you a better idea in case any of you weren't really familiar with what we're trying to do here. So in this lecture and in the next assignment that we're doing, you are going to write a persuasive document. In that document, you're going to pitch an idea to your group to determine what you're going to do for your survey for your last assignment for the class, which is your group assignment. So for this pitch, you are identifying a workplace issue, and then you're going to do a brief pitch. It's 500 words or so to inform your group of what you would like to do for your pitch, and then hopefully they'll latch onto that idea and then want to do that with you. So because what we're doing here is persuasive, it's important that we do a little bit of review back to rhetoric, which we discussed earlier in the semester, and then also kind of identify some different things that we have obviously in our previous writings worked on persuasive writing, because the goal is to get your reader to do the thing that you're asking them to do. But what we're doing now is you're trying to convince people in a very persuasive outward way that your opinion or your idea is the best idea that's available. So it's a little bit different than what we've done, but it is kind of along the same veins. It's just a little bit different than what we've done. So I have some slides, and I'm going to go ahead and share those now. Give me 1 second, and I'll share my screen. So we'll go through and do this presentation. I plan to upload all of our presentations as well, and so you'll be able to see all of the presentations that we've had from this entire class in case that's useful for you going forward. So here in this presentation, we're going to talk about persuasive writing and pitching ideas. So I'm not so sure how familiar each of you are with the idea of pitching ideas to a group. If any of you have ever worked in marketing, you might have had some experience with this, but it's possible that you have never had to pitch an idea ever, or at least maybe you think that you haven't, but you have. So I want you to think about a time when you were a kid and you tried to convince your family member, your teacher, your friend, a group of friends to do something, or to buy you something, perhaps, or that you really wanted to go play with your friends or go and sleep over at a friend's house, something like that. So I want you to think about that time. I can think of times when I was a kid that I was trying to convince my parents that I wanted to go and sleep at a friend's house after maybe we had already made plans as a family or something like that, right? Or you go to the store and you really want to have some sort of a toy, or you want to have a game, or you want to have your friend go and play, or your dad or parent, whomever, go and play with you in the backyard, right? So whenever you have those situations, you are pitching an idea to them. Because if you had seen an advertisement for this toy that you really thought was interesting and you want them to buy it for you, you're probably going to lead with, hey, look at this really cool toy that I found that does all of these things. This is why I should have it. And now I'm asking you to buy it for me, right? So it's a pretty similar structure. So think about some of the things that you did as a kid. What methods did you use when you tried to convince them to do what you wanted? How did you approach them with it? Why did you choose to talk with them about it the way that you did? Like maybe with your mom versus your grandparent or your friend versus a sibling, you might approach all of this differently because they're different people, right? So you know your audience and you're adapting your message to your audience even at that young of an age. So odds are whenever you did this, some of the methods that we will talk about in class are methods that you actually employed when you were pitching an idea. So this is just kind of a brief introduction into what an idea pitch might be, right? Like you want something, you're telling somebody else what you want, and then you're hoping that they follow through and buy into your idea and do what it is that you've asked. So you may ask yourself, didn't we already talk about persuasion? And the answer is yes. Yes, we did, but now we're applying it a little bit differently, which is kind of what I alluded to earlier. So instead of writing to encourage people like of your recommendation, like we've done previously, and like we previously talked about in class with emails, right? Like if we go back to the computer assignment that's from your text, where they're looking to buy new computers, it's different than that because with that, you're meeting a business need, right? Like you are, you've been asked to do something by your boss, you're compiling information for your boss, and then you're submitting it to them with facts so that they can hopefully follow the recommendation that you've set forward. And instead, what we're doing here is you are looking to sell an idea or to sell, well, really in this situation, it's definitely an idea because you want your team to decide that your idea is the best idea possible and then move forward and use that for your survey. Another difference with pitches is usually if you're pitching an idea, you're going to be competing with other people who are also pitching ideas. And so within that vein, it's also important that you try to outdo them or try to outsell your counterparts, whomever it is that's trying to sell their idea. You're trying to compete with them as well. So one of the things that we are going to do differently, of course, is structure. And so within a pitch, you're looking at doing a few things. One, you have to grab their attention because you have to let them know why this idea matters or why it's interesting or why they should pay attention to what you're about to say. The second thing is you have a very short amount of time or a limited number of words to use in your pitch. If you are doing a pitch of yourself at an interview, like if they ask you a question like, tell me about yourself, you are given 1 to 3 minutes maybe that you can talk to them, and 3 minutes is a very long time. There's something called an elevator pitch where you are pitching some sort of an idea that you're pitching yourself and the length of time it takes you to get on and off the elevator. And the idea behind this is you might meet somebody who could hire you on an elevator. You might run into your boss on an elevator. And in the period of time that you're in that, that confined space with them, what can you tell them in that short elevator ride that's going to get them to want to hire you or is going to get them to want to take your idea? So that's the idea, one of the ideas behind a pitch. Another difference is you're selling your team specifically on the idea. So your audience is not, some made up supervisor. It's not some made up donor or investor. It's not any of the things that are researcher. It's not the things we've done previously. You're selling an idea to your team of peers that's in the class that you're enrolled in right now. So you have some level of understanding of those people, or you will, and so you'll be selling that idea to your team. And then lastly, you have to convince them that your idea is the best idea that's available. So you won't necessarily know what it is that they're pitching, but you would need to inform them of why your idea is the best, why it's valid, why it's important. So these are some of the differences between what you've done previously and what we're asking you to do in this assignment. So of course, because this involves persuasion, you're going to use rhetoric whenever you're pitching your ideas. So we're talking about ethos, logos, and pathos again, just like you do anytime you talk about persuasion in any circumstance, it seems. So within ethos, credibility is important because people are not going to do what you want them to do or adapt to your point of view if they do not trust you. So if you're coming off like somebody who's selling snake oil, if you're coming across as somebody who is making things up or is just out for themselves, it's very unlikely that they're going to want to follow you. Or if they can identify you haven't done your research, right? So credibility is really important here. Logic is important because you want people to know that the information you're sharing with them is backed up by valid, credible data. So you need to provide people with data, but you don't necessarily need to overload them with data. There's quite a bit of research and quite a bit of, there have been quite a few books written even about how you would discuss politics with somebody who is on the opposite side of the spectrum from you. And bombarding them with lots of facts is not always the best way to get them to adopt your idea. However, it is useful to provide them with facts that back up the information that you're wanting to provide. So maybe the fact isn't the only thing that you're bringing forward as one of the points that makes your idea a good idea. Instead, you are sharing with them an idea that you feel is important that supports your overall idea, but then you're backing it up with information that makes it more powerful. And then lastly, of course, is pathos. The emotion is important because you have to make the people care about what it is that you've proposed. So with your introductory statement, that could be something maybe that's kind of provocative or something that would maybe make them feel emotional about the issue. With your data, you might, and your, while you're building your credibility and all of that stuff, you might be able to tie in some emotional things that are going to make them want to care. And I'm not talking about you're trying to convert them to your religion. You're not trying to convert them into something completely different from what they've previously done. Instead, just letting them know why this issue is important to them, to the world, to your company, any of those things in a way that kind of evokes emotion is going to be helpful for you. So pitches are set up in a pretty linear way. It starts with a memorable first impression. So you need to let them know why this is interesting, period. So within your introduction to them, it's very important that you state what your position is, but then also think about a way to introduce the idea that's going to help them feel like they want to know more. So I listed here one idea, which is imagine if they had started Star Wars with instead of long ago in a galaxy far, far away, what if instead they had led with this one time in space? It doesn't evoke the same emotion. It doesn't maybe feel quite as interesting as if you started out with something that's a little bit more interesting to listen to and something that really kind of brings a sense of importance to the situation. I mean, if you're looking at doing a comedy and it starts out this one time in space, maybe that makes a lot of sense. But if you're talking about something that's going to become, an epic story that people are going to care about for decades, starting out with long ago in a galaxy far, far away is probably a better way to go. The second piece is identification of the problem. So what is it that you're asking them to care about? This is your position statement, which we have done in every single one of your assignments so far, and we will continue to for the foreseeable future in this class. So you need to let them know what the problem is, right? So if you're starting out with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, there was this group of people and you list, kind of give them some insight into what Star Wars is about, then maybe the problem is that Darth Vader is taking over and you propose that we find some way to solve this problem. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, can't go into it too much. However, just think about it that way. Like if you're trying to get an idea across to anybody that lives in the Star Wars universe, you're going to have to relate it to something that's important to them, right? So identify what the problem is, and that's going to let them know what you're asking them to care about. And then you're going to need evidence to tell this story. So what evidence supports your position? Again, you're not bombarding them with a whole bunch of facts. It's similar to what we've done previously. You're going to pick 2 or 3 issues that you can focus on that are going to help support your position and that are hopefully going to get your audience to care about what it is that you're discussing. So you provide maybe, something that seems on surface level like an opinion, but maybe you back that up with facts, right? You're not doing any of this just as an opinion of why things are important. You need to back them up with data, right? But you don't necessarily just need to bombard them with data, but you do need to support the ideas that you bring forward. And then lastly, the call to action, which is important in most business communications, honestly. You need to identify what is to them, what it is you want them to do, right? And then you need to be clear and specific on that. So with this whole anatomy of a pitch, you're going to tell them why it's interesting, what you want them to care about, what evidence supports your position, and then what specifically do you want them to do about it. This is all listed in the prompt for the assignment, so you can go back and review that, identify from that kind of what you want your format to be, but this is exactly the anatomy that we're looking for in this pitch, and probably most or not all pitches you might do in the future in the workplace. So what types of words should you use in persuasive writing? I found a really good article from Inc.com, and it's linked here, so you can go and look at that if you'd like to, especially as you're creating your pitch. So with the words that you choose shouldn't necessarily be flowery. That's not what we do in Tech Comm. We're not writing prose. We're not Emily Dickinson. We're not writing poetry, right? You need to pick clear and concise wording. You need to use your words. You need to do all we've discussed in style. However, you should make sure that the word choices that you make are going to convince your audience to act. So what does that mean? If you think about words that are important to you, there may be a whole slew of them, but one of the most important words to anybody in the world is you. Because if you're talking about a group of people, you're trying to convince them to come over to your side, it makes sense that you would inform them why this information is important to them, or I'm thinking of you, or you would benefit from this, or things like that. You're not projecting onto them. But using the term you makes people more interested because you're engaging your audience that way. Second, urgent words lead people to pay attention. So if you are trying to get them to do something because it's important to do it immediately, you would tell them that. For instance, if you have people that are discussing the urgency of doing something about the coronavirus outbreak, then it's important that you do it now. It's important that you do it soon. So you would let them know that urgency is going to help lead them, or those urgent words are going to help lead them to care more about what you're doing and hopefully act at all, or certainly faster than they would have otherwise. Because is also a powerful word because it demonstrates cause and effect. So instead of just saying, it's important that students understand the new pass, no pass course policy, right? Maybe the answer is actually, it's important that students understand the new pass, no pass course policy because it helps them understand how their courses will impact their GPA, right? So if you provide a little bit more context there, a little bit more information, and you give them a because, and then it's a cause and effect, that makes the information more valuable to the person you're speaking with. So in the article that I've linked here, there was an interesting story where they talked about that they had somebody go into a copy shop where you get Xerox copies made of things. This was before people had at-home printers. And so they would ask them questions. And so within those questions, 60% of the people would allow somebody to skip in line when they just said, I need 5 copies. So instead of saying, or instead of just getting in line, they would say, hi, do you mind if I get in front of you? I just need 5 copies of this document. Because it's not that many copies, 60% of people decided to let this person go in front of them. However, if the person instead phrased it differently and said, is it okay if I skip in front of you to make, I just need 5 copies, but I need to skip in front of you because I'm in a rush. So then you're letting them know it's not gonna take that long for them to do the thing they need to do. And because, which is providing a cause and effect, they're in a rush creates a sense of urgency. And whenever they rephrase that, it allowed 94% of people allowed them to go in front of them in line. So this is just an indicator of how when you're being persuasive, that the way that you word things is going to be useful to you. And I really recommend reading that article because it'll give you a little bit of an idea as you start to write some of the terminology that you might want to pick. So now we're going to do kind of a practice to demonstrate what this looks like from your end whenever you start working on your pitch proposal. So the prompt here is some people feel that universities should change from an A, B, C, D, E, D, F grading scale, which would be a letter grading scale, to a numerical grading scale, where students would earn a 94 in a course instead of an A, for example. So I realize that this isn't a huge hot topic. I know this isn't maybe that thought-provoking or interesting to all of you, but just for the sake of demonstrating what this looks like, that's what I've chosen. So now I'm going to ask, what's your position on the issue? And how would you persuade someone that that position is the best option, right? So we have your prompt, you determine what your position is, and then you're going to persuade someone to care about this particular issue. So step one is introducing your argument. So for the letter grading system, you would start out with the compelling introductory idea, which might look something like, when you think of statements about student success, what do you think of? I think of statements like, she's a 4.0 student, or they get all A's. Okay, so you're leading that with, I think, you know, this is a universal idea that if you talk about somebody getting a good grade or being a good student, they use terminology like 4.0 student or all A's, right? So then you might insert some additional information here that provides a little bit of backing information that supports your original statement. And then you would provide a brief, clearly stated position, which would be something like UNT should continue to use letter grades. So if we flip to the other side, for a numerical system, you would have your compelling introductory idea, which is, if you knew that you could put in 9% less effort and receive the same result, would you still put in the extra 9% effort? Then you would insert additional information there, potentially to support your main idea. And then you would state a clear position, which is UNT should use a numerical grading system instead of a letter grading system. So two different ideas, the same format to go with both of them, right? Because they're kind of competing ideas, but they're highlighting different things here, okay? So then in step two, you're gonna support your argument. So with the letter grading system, you would use strong supporting evidence with things like, universities traditionally use the 4.0 grading scale, so it makes it easier to transfer grades from one institution to another. Employers are familiar with the 4.0 grading scale, right? Because maybe some companies are looking just for people that have a 3.0 GPA or higher, right? And then the last one is, the system decreases pressure on students because they can score a 90 or a 99 and still receive the same points. So instead of students being super concerned about, you know, a point here or there, instead they can get an A, because an A is anything between, you know, 100 and a 90, and that's going to be the same grade for them, so it decreases some of the pressure. So those are some of the supporting evidence arguments. For a numerical system, students' grades more accurately reflect their effort in an individual course, because instead of a student who puts in 90% effort versus 100% effort, you would actually be able to see that as a specific grade versus having it broken down where it's just one letter grade regardless. Another idea, because grade gaps are not 10 points apart, students have a higher chance of increasing their overall GPAs. Because instead of getting a B, and it's just a flat B that's always going to be 3 points, instead you might have an 88 versus an 80, which overall would increase what your GPA is, or your percentages. And then lastly, students are more likely to work harder to achieve a higher grade, because a 100 grade benefits them more than a 90 in their overall final grade, right? So you might work a little bit harder to get a few extra points, do some extra credit, things like that, because it might boost your grade a little bit. So there's some supporting evidence here that backs up what your argument is. So you state here, right, like we're stating that employers are familiar with the 4.0 grading scale, and then you would go in and you would find some sort of research that backs up what it is that you've just said, so that they have enough information going forward to know that you're not just saying employers like the 4.0 scale, you're instead backing it up and saying, you know, X number of employers are looking for students with a 2.5 GPA or higher, or something like that. All right, and then you would conclude your argument. So for the letter grading system, you would have a clear, compelling concluding statement, which would be something like, help UNT remain consistent with traditional grading policies and join me in supporting the continuation of letter grades in the UNT grading policy, right? So you've packed a lot in there. You're asking for help, so you're letting them know that you are soliciting them for help. You're asking them to join you, which is a powerful word, because people like to be a part of something. They like to help others. and then you state exactly what your position is, right? So you're packing a lot of information in there to be kind of compelling with your argument. If you feel like this sounds like a politics type thing, it is. Political discussions and political arguments are formed this exact same way. And then for the numerical system, a possible concluding statement would be, we deserve more accurate reflections of our work in our courses. I ask you to support me in adopting a numerical grading system for UNT's grading policy. So it's a similar thing. You're telling what we deserve, right? So that's a powerful word. That's a feeling word, an emotion word. You're asking for an accurate reflection of work in your courses, and then you're asking them to support you so it's very clear what it is that you want for them to do. So after you've done all of this, you've followed the anatomy, you've done all of the things, then you will review your writing. After you complete writing your persuasive document, you should ask yourself, would you take action if you were given that piece of writing? If it was presented to you in the way that you presented it, would you care about it? Do you clearly state your position, support your position, and make your reader care about the issue? Which really goes to the anatomy, which is spelled out for you in your assignment prompt, so that part's pretty easy. But do you do all of these things which are going to help support your position? And then lastly, is your writing accurate and based on more than only your opinion? Are you backing up the information with data that you have found that supports your argument, or are you just stating opinions? Because if you're only stating opinions, that's not going to sell your idea to your group. So that was an overview of what the pitch assignment really is and how to be persuasive in the pitch that you are delivering to your team. As I mentioned, I will share these slides so you can go back and look at them. You can kind of dig in a little bit, maybe like want to make notes on the anatomy, any of that stuff. So you can go back and review it as much as you need. But it's a pretty simple thing. Just think about when you were a kid or any time that you've asked anybody for anything, you're usually going to start out by saying, I need or want this. Here's some reasons to support it. Will you provide that support, right? It's a pretty simple thing. So that's what we're doing here with this assignment. But as I mentioned, please feel free to reach out to me, ask me any questions, anything that you might need from me. I'm here to help. Just please reach out. I'm happy to do that for you. But thank you so much.